This is part 3 of the Synth Recipes #1 Synth Bass. So just an addendum to the last video, I went ahead and played around with the settings for a while and updated the settings. A few things I discovered. I was getting quite a bit of clipping there in the beginning. So I realized that this resonant low pass frequency, when it was being multiplied by the envelope, this is the frequency, it was going down to 0 every time, and that was causing some clipping. When you go to 0, when you pull the filter down to 0, it causes a little blip or bleep. So what I did was I just put those two in these parentheses here, multiply the same one I had before, and I added just a little bit, 80 hertz, and you can probably go down a little bit lower. So just add a little bit so it never goes down to 0, but instead it just goes down to 80. So that helped a lot with the clipping there. And then I just tweaked some of these settings here. I lowered the attack of both the filter and the overall attack amplitude envelopes to 10 milliseconds there. I played around a lot with the decay settings, and I about 140 milliseconds seemed to be pretty good, 0.14 seconds. And then just increase the releases here to 70 milliseconds there. And mess around with the curve. I got a curve -6 here on the overall amplitude envelope and a 0 curve on the frequency filter frequency envelope. And then have a sustain here level of about 0.1. So it releases that. I also lifted the overall frequency, so it has a little bit of crunchiness and brightness, to this 1800. You can play with that now, though, and then decay still 0, sustain 0. So you can mess around a little bit with this, and I'll show you when I actually get it hooked up to the mouse, what that does. This Q quotient. The lower you go, the more sort of funky and wah-wah you get, and the higher you go, you get a little bit more 80s kind of mellow bassy kind of thing going on. Okay, so those are some of the updates. Just you might want to change your code. You can just grab it here. Now what I did then was I took the let's see. All right. Okay. Well, here it was bigger. Sorry. So anyways, hopefully you can still see that. The last one, added the 80 there and changed some of these settings, but hopefully this wasn't too small for you. So what I did was then I took the original MIDI sign. Let's see what it's called. It's called MT GUI. Oh no, sorry. It's called MIDI sign. The original MIDI sign there, and it had a boot, and it had our original sine wave theremin thing, and a couple OSC defs, right? And then it started this synth MIDI sign. Okay, so I just took that and I added my synth bass, synth def to it, just under the MIDI sign there. Okay, nothing else has changed, and I just change that to synth bass. So instead of using the synth def MIDI sign here, I'm using the synth bass. Okay, so that's what I did here. I just did that. So that should get it set up for the MIDI theremin. And I also went and just added our keyboard to our original MT GUI. Remember, our MT GUI was just a blank page. And that was just to give us something to start going and practicing and learning some processing coding. And then we made a keyboard, what we associated with our ultrasonic sensor. And you can still use that one if you want. But since we want like an attack really for this one, and we want to push our mouse button, I just incorporated this and left all the mouse pressed stuff in from the original MT GUI. And I just copied all the virtual keyboard stuff over, so we have a keyboard to look at as well. Copy that in here. Okay, so you can go back over that stuff, or you can just download this, and hopefully you understand how that happened. I just sort of combined some code together. All right, so we should be good to go. I'm going to boot my server there, get the SuperClouder going first, and I'm going to send this #2, which will send both synth defs, even though I'm probably not going to use that, and our OSC defs there for the trig, amp, and pitch. And then I'll start my my synth, okay, my bass synth, and then I'll run this one with a keyboard, okay, and it should work. So there it goes. So it's a pretty nice sound. I think I got some pretty good for just a little bit of super collider code there. Up here. Okay. And also I moved the octave down a little bit. I just went from 36 to 60. You can adjust that, and if you saw my earlier tutorial, you'll see how to do that. Okay, so there you go. And I think that sounds pretty good. Now let me just show you how to adjust this quotient here. The lower you go, the sort of funkier it gets. So let's go down to like 0.2. And I'll stop that, and I'll resend the synth defs since I made a change, and I'll start up the synth again. See, it has that kind of wah. Anyways, it has that wow wow. I think that sounds pretty cool. You know, you can go all the way down. Let's see what happens at 0.5 or something like that. It becomes a pitch. Yeah, it sounds really funky there. And then you can go up high if you want to get closer to 1.9 maybe. Then it sounds a little bit like I would say kind of more 80s-ish. A little bit more mellow. Okay, so anyways, there you go. You get the point. And so hopefully that was enough. We covered a lot in those few tutorials, but hopefully there's enough to get you a pretty nice sounding bass controlled with your mouse there. Just to review again, we updated some of the synth bass parameters there. Got them just kind of tweaked just right with this 80 here. I combined the code here within my MIDI sign, originally MIDI sign thing, and basically that's just us booting, sending the synth defs to the server, sending these OSC defs to the server, which control my trigger on and off, my pitch, and my amp with my mouse, and then starting a synth there. Okay, and then my GUI with keyboard really is just taking all the code from the one we had before, which was this empty GUI with continuous pitch, which also had the keyboard there, and just sort of popping that in, changing these parameters here, pitch low and pitch high, lowering that to 2 octaves below middle C to middle C, and it just keeps all the mouse triggering business in and just going for it, and that seems to work pretty good. You get a thing. Oh, and then finally, I think it's still running. Hopefully it is. Yeah. Just remember also amplitude. I made the keys all the way up and down because that's pretty soft. And then you can have very loud. So it's velocity sensitive along the vertical axis. So, for open source freeware, a little bit of elbow grease, I think that's pretty good. It's a pretty good sound. Almost performable, useful instrument there for you to use. All free and just a little effort on your part. Okay, well, good luck with that. Hopefully that's useful, or at least useful for learning some things about programming and making some interactive projects. So we'll continue on with the recipe series and see if we can have a different thing next time.